So we are at 4X Alexander Circle, and we are just trying to get to the picture because this is all a little bit too technical for me. We are trying to do 5 big improvements to our house. So we're trying to add a sliding glass door where the current door is this, but it would be making the door bigger. We are adding stairs down to the yard. The rest of the neighborhood, everyone in the neighborhood has stairs. Ours, because our next door neighbors, our back patios don't attach. We don't have stairs down to the yard, so we'd like to do that. We'd like to change the materials of the rail and the floor. And we have a water problem in the garage, so it's kind of almost a mandatory thing, but we're adding a French drain ideally to the yard. So just kind of reasons to do this. We're trying to improve the functionality. We don't use this space that much at all. It's extremely hot, so the idea of changing the materials of the floor will help that. Right now, it is concrete slab sitting on a just like rubber membrane. So we get a lot of water sitting. It kind of like I have to be pretty active about monitoring to clear out the drain. So we're hoping to increase the slope to the drain, have a better system that we don't get as much sitting water. The stones that we have are turning green because we have so much sitting water. It collects because we have our flower beds, which we're a little sad to get rid of the flower beds because we loved them in concept. However, number one, because of our water problem, brought more water to this area. But also we don't have water access to this area, so it was a hard project to kind of maintain and look nice for the neighborhood. So it was me either bringing a hose up or bringing a watering can, but we don't have water on that patio. So it's just kind of like a tricky way to get these water beds watered. And also it just kind of creates a lot of dirt. So our family ended up not using the space. We've kind of thought about it for a long time. We are a family that likes to spend our time outside. So we worked with a designer and she said, so I'm kind of jumping around, but one reason for the railing that we've chosen is this is our house of our view. We are kind of a shotgun house. You wouldn't think of that looking at it, but it's a shotgun. So we look towards the woods. So our view is the beautiful Tower Park Woods, which we absolutely love, but we can't see that. And we are hoping to change the railing to have a better view of looking out at the woods. And let's see, I would say the last thing is we've worked with a local designer that we tried to submit something that we hoped would be approved that that you all would like as well. The stairs down to the yard, sliding glass door, neighbors have already changed materials of this, so it shouldn't be anything that someone hasn't already done back in the neighborhood, but it is change, and so here we are to see if it is appropriate change.
Good. Great, thank you. Do we have any questions for Kelsa? No questions on the application? No? Okay. I would like to read out, have you seen a copy of the report from the city's historic preservation consultant, Wes?
Yeah.
So he was hired within the last year-ish. So that's part of our review process now is that he reviews it prior to, because where you live has certain guidelines that are placed over top of it, that when the city took possession of those properties that transferred over. So we're essentially following the Secretary of Interior National Preservation Standards. So guidelines were put in place. So he's evaluated it through that lens. And the gist of it is to summarize it, and you will get a copy of this. Of the 5 things that you want to do, he would be in support of the stairs to the yard, the railing material change with an asterisk,
Okay.
where it would have to, and you likely would have to come back for that.
Okay.
But that could be allowed if it's more compatible with the architecture back in Alexander Circle. So the cable rail that you proposed, completely different period, very modern, very contemporary, would never have been found on a house like that 100 years ago. Flooring change would be allowed, French drain would be allowed, sliding rear door would be a very hard no.
Okay.
Okay, that is, windows and doors are one of the most heavily regulated components of historic structures. So taking a single door with a transom above it, enlarging it to a nearly 10-foot wide opening and putting in an all-glass slider flies directly in the face of what the guidelines, what we have to interpret, okay?
So I'm confused of why that is a direct no, other than,
Yeah, I can read his summary of that. So this is on page 2 under the heading of replacing historic entryway. I'm happy to read the entirety of this, but it's a solid 2 pages of like 10 font. But relative to the replacing the historic entryway, this project is proposing to replace the existing historic entryway and demolish the surrounds to make way for a new, wider sliding door. The existing door is a single historic wood door with transom. The proposed replacement is a triple sliding door with a rough width of 127 inches, which is approximately 3 times as wide as the existing opening. The memorandum of MOA and the Secretary of Interior standards are very clear when it comes to the replacement of original doors and historic entryways. Original doors will be repaired rather than replaced whenever feasible. Replacement will only occur in cases where deterioration to the existing door is beyond repair. Also, the original appearance of entrance doors shall be maintained and preserved. This includes the original doors and transom. This work would also require the removal of the stone lintel that exists above the door. These are seen as important masonry elements that define the historic character of the building, something that will be retained and preserved. Lastly, when replacement due to deterioration is deemed necessary, the replacement door will match the original as closely as possible. While preservation principle number 1 states that the removal of the original entrances on secondary facades is permitted, it is only when it is not visible from the public right-of-way. So the conclusion then, again, decking okay, railing if it's more appropriate, okay. The proposed replacement of the existing historic doors not in concurrence with the guidelines set forth in the MOA. While the MOA allows the replacement of original entryways, it is only when they are not visible from the right-of-way, which this door is. Moreover, the replacement of such doors, especially in such an unsympathetic manner, his words, not mine, as the one being proposed here, which would not only remove the historic material and architectural detailing seen in the existence of the transom and lintel, but would also alter the building's fenestration, configuration, and design, will not be permitted. Okay.
Am I allowed to say anything to that?
Absolutely, yeah. This is a discussion. We haven't made any decisions yet.
Okay.
We interpret his feedback before we
Okay.
take a vote, so sure.
So my feeling towards that is I do understand we're taking out a lot of original material, which is the brick. And if you look symmetrically on the other side of the house, they don't have a 3-pane sliding glass door, but they have a sliding glass door that's been put in this location. I also feel that we are making an improvement to the house where it's not, I understand what you're saying about stylistically. Like if we can make sure that the door fits in stylistically, but that is why we are putting it at the exact same level of the windows. We are going to, put in the detail of the cement header above it. We are going to make sure that this door does appear to be a part of the original, although it's not, but the intention is to not make it look like a new door. And I just personally, something that I'm hoping to do, but I do see it as an improvement. The current door is nothing of quality, and this door will be much more quality, so it feels like it's an improvement to the house. I personally feel that, especially with the patio area, these homes were turned over by a, what was the person, the developer that came through and did them. And I feel very grateful to the developer for giving our neighborhood and Fort Thomas, this life of Tower Park again. However, I feel that the price was kept cheap to have young families be able to live there. And by the price being kept cheap, it isn't necessarily all the high-end things that maybe a home developer would have liked to be able to upgrade some things. So I personally feel that we would be enhancing the house. It would, and again, I completely agree that we are taking away old material, the old brick, but it's replacing, I don't know, I guess it's, is it replacing it for a non-historic nature, which is the question. But we do feel like we are making an improvement, is what I would say. And it's keeping it as historic as possible. The improvement is to look seamless, and that this isn't a new door put in, and that it is, something from an original, and it has been done in other homes in the neighborhood.
Thank you. I'm not familiar with what your neighbors did. I don't recall that coming before this commission and during my tenure.
Was done by the developer.
That I would find that surprising because we toured every building before they started their work, specifically looking at doors and windows. We held a meeting on site to make a determination on all of the doors and windows. We allowed for the replacement of the windows so long as they were a period appropriate window, meaning they had narrow sight lines along the rails around the perimeters of the windows and not a modern one, which is typically a little chunkier. We required them to restore and retain the more character-defining windows that typically were on the upper stories of the buildings or maybe in some of the attic spaces. The same thing goes to the door. So I don't specifically recall that we gave an approval to put in a modern sliding door to the rear of one of those properties.
I can't necessarily say it's a modern sliding door, but they do have a sliding glass door in the exact location.
Yeah, it's just, it would be very atypical, like if you look at, the doors behind you, and that's probably close to 10 feet wide, maybe a little bit more, that would never appear on a house of that character, of that age, that was load-bearing masonry. Mm-hmm. So that would be a significant modification to the overall aesthetic of the building.
Is it a width of the glass? That's
for sure a contributing factor, yes.
Okay. If we would be able to find a different door that was more narrow, would there be like a, size that we could?
I would think, can't speak for everybody.
Well, to me, I think the main problem is part of the way the guidelines are written, at least the federal guidelines, is they allow you quite a bit of room when you add on to do different things. But one of the concepts is that if that add-on is removed, then the old building reverts back to its old original nature, which is why they don't want you to change openings and things of that type, because if for some reason somebody wants to take it back to the original, they could take off whatever was added and they would still have the basic structure of the original building. So to go in where you have a single door and start putting in an opening that's 9 feet wide is just not one of the things that the guidelines would want you to do or even allow you to do.
Are these original doors? Because without the patios where they are, I don't believe that these are original doors, that this door was created because of the patio.
Memory serves correct, a lot of those homes had a little porch immediately off of them, like a little very small, not like an entertainment porch, but a very functional, get out of the rear of the property kind of a door and porch.
We do have that door, which is an original, but this is what I believe is a new door. That is off of the back of the house, but most of the neighbors have their patio door is that back of the door. Their patios are attached to that rear little porch. You go to the rear little porch and then you go out above their garage. Ours is just happens to be different, I think, because of the spacing that you couldn't fit the driveway coming around. So you couldn't put our two patios and driveways next to each other. So I believe we're the only separated one, but I do think that this is, and again, I don't know if that matters, but I do think that this door was created because of the unique situation of us, that our driveway and our garage does not go off the back as everyone else's does. So most houses, I don't think, have this door that we do.
I mean, I think the basis for Wes's review, there's a section in the guidelines for entrances, So just the headings of those principles, number 1 is original entrances shall be preserved. Number 2 is original doors and other entrance elements shall be preserved and maintained, repair rather than replace whenever possible. 3 is replacement entrance elements shall match the original in dimension, material, and design. So I think that's the one that kind of is referenced as why it would be a hard no if we're not only changing materials, designs, but also like all 3 of those things are being altered in the proposed change. And there are different sections that pertain to the original fabric of the house versus additions like the garage. And then there's one house back there that was not original at all. It was an entirely new house that is in an entirely separate construction or a separate section of new construction. So even within that small area, there are different regulations depending on the context of what the proposed work is. So I think really the focus is just the fact that it's an original element that is being modified pretty dramatically.
Right.
So if something about that door is not functional or not period, because there's actually another one that's non-compatible replacement doors shall be removed and replaced with historically appropriate wood doors. Storm doors shall not interfere with or distract from the design of the original door. Those are the 5 headings underneath entrances. So when it's an original element, it's a pretty strong preservation feature that needs to be maintained based on the required restrictions. So I think all those things kind of add up to the recommendation, but the recommendation is based on some actual documentation.
I think the 2 things that I'm holding on to at the door is I don't believe it's technically an original. I think we've created this door in the past few years. And that, our neighbors do have a sliding glass door in the same place. The people that share the wall with us. So it has been approved. Or at one point, I don't know if it was with the Jill Felder, but
Maybe I can make a recommendation if you'd like. I mean, we can table all of this for this evening and take no action. You can come back next month. In the meantime, if you wanted to try to get your hands on the construction drawings for your house.
okay.
In the meantime, we can maybe dig up our meeting minutes from when we reviewed that probably.
Well, I'd like to see whether that's an original opening, or was that modified during the renovation of the buildings?
Correct.
If it was, it certainly wasn't something that we were aware of.
Yeah. And if you're, it also could be the difference with your neighbors, and I didn't pay attention to their sightlines, but if they're not visible from the right of way, then they get a little more leniency.
Okay.
So there's, as Ben was articulating there, within just back there are several different conditions that we have to put a filter through when we're evaluating applications like this based upon, is it original, is it part of an addition, is it highly visible from the roadway? I think if you'd like, we can certainly table it if you really would like to pursue it further, but you'd have to come back again, and I would say you would want to gather whatever documentation you can about what was original to the rear of your house.
If it is not original, does that change much in the, technicality of being able to possibly?
Maybe.
Okay.
Maybe.
Okay. I'm like, is it worth it? I'm not trying to pick an argument, but I'm just trying to say,
I think
just
going
trying
from
to say, is it still possible?
it could have very well, let's put a hypothetical out. It would not be atypical that maybe you had an original window there that to get the door in, they kept the window in the same location, so it was symmetrical with the rest of the house. It was part of an original opening, but maybe they just cut the bottom portion of it out to accommodate a door, right? That would be a fairly easy thing to put back should that door ever come out, and you could put the original window back in. So it depends. We have the ability to interpret and apply the guidelines. I think going from a 3-foot wide opening to a 10-foot wide opening, or whether or not the door was originally there, or was a window originally, or is a brand new opening that was put in 5 or 6 years ago when those houses were finished. I think going from 3 to 10 is a pretty drastic increase.
Yes.
And without going through everything in the context, but for instance, if that door itself is just a terrible door for whatever reason, and you wanted to replace it in the same masonry opening with a new door that fit without modifying the lintel and the brickwork there, and it's a historically appropriate door, I mean, based on this, I think it needs to be wood as opposed to clad, which is a maintenance thing that, that starts to come up. But those sorts of things are probably acceptable, but making it substantially wider is probably the biggest issue with, it's not the fact that the door is being replaced, it's the fact that it's being substantially enlarged.
Right.
Is this your family room, Kelsa?
Yes.
I wonder if Wes would take the door out and add 2 windows to match existing, and then replace the door,
I don't know about that either.
because you're altering the
Yeah.
brick.
Yeah, I think that'd be a pretty significant change too. I would have a hard time supporting that, just in full disclosure. Not that it's a formal vote, but I think that would be a pretty significant change too.
Is there any direction about the width that, maybe we could ask our neighbors, like the width of theirs, that if it's, part of that is that the door that we're trying to replace is too large? Could we possibly do a 2-pane sliding glass door? Or, is there any kind of like negotiation of like any kind of research I can do of a new presentation to say this first one didn't work, but
I would still maintain that your first check would be, was this an original opening or not?
okay,
Was it originally a window or not? Was it originally a door or not?
okay. And would that be able to be communicated over email, or will that be next meeting?
You would have to bring that forward in a subsequent meeting.
Okay,
If we choose to table the entirety of this tonight, I think there are probably some things we can approve on here.
okay.
If you'd like to go ahead and get some of those approved, or you can just resubmit the entirety of the application with any additional or new supporting documentation.
Anything that you feel that you can approve, we possibly start working on the French drain to work on a water problem. The door, there's certain things that would stop other things, but say anything that you feel that you can approve, we'd be glad.
I did have just a question on your engineer's documents, just for the sake of clarity, and I can't read this small. When it talks about the repair and adding insulation and composite decking on top of it, are they putting a membrane back on top of the insulation? Because it doesn't say anything about that here.
I didn't know, but there were
They
two
should.
proposals.
They should.
And, okay, there was one that it sounded like unsure because they were trying to lower the floor, and our contractor said he was not a fan of that plan. And then the other one was just taking the concrete slabs off and raising like and I don't know if I'm using the right terms, but like a sort of a spindle-esque, so you can control the height of the floor. But it would be on top of the rubber membrane. was
Yeah,
my
it's-
interpretation.
It's pretty commonly used when you have a sloped roof or a sloped subfloor and you're trying to level out your pavers or composite decking on top of that, so the little feet allow this to be level while this is sloped below it.
Right.
But what I saw in here on option B was just a word of advice. They say they're remove existing membrane, provide built-up insulation to increase existing roof slope to drain. They're silent on whether or not they're putting a membrane on top of your insulation, and they should.
Okay. I'm gonna nip
You will
that.
have way more water in your
Yeah.
garage without a roof membrane. And they should probably, if they do use the feet or something to support the composite, they usually just, so you make sure that your engineer and your contractor do good work, there should be a sacrificial membrane, or sometimes just those pedestal feet have a separate piece of membrane that sometimes ships with them. You need that between the pedestal, that slip sheet, and then the membrane. Otherwise, just over time from walking on it, those pedestals will penetrate your roof membrane and you're back where you are today with water getting into your garage.
So is that 2 membranes?
I mean, it can be literally like, sometimes they'll just use scrap material that, they cut into like 4-inch square pieces, depending upon the size of the pedestal feet that they use, and they just
Okay.
put it, like, this is the roof membrane, they get this little sacrificial piece that could be scrap, they put that down, and then they put this on top of it.
Okay.
So this is only there to protect this
Okay.
from
Okay.
that happening over time and you getting a whole bunch of punctured holes in your
Okay.
roof membrane.
Okay.
Okay. Any further discussion up here?
What about the railing?
I think the railing, the guidance from Wes, I think in general, it would be allowed to be replaced, but it needs to be something that's more appropriate. So I would recommend that you, your architect engineer, my recommendation would be that they go ahead and draw something up on what they're proposing.
Okay.
Take some cues from what some of your neighbors have, or what you might have on a front porch or whatever, that's a little bit more traditional and historic. And then come back with that,
Okay.
with the door, if you would like.
Okay. Okay.
That's how I interpret it.
Yeah. And do you have a copy of the regulations?
I do not. No.
I know we had, and I had a hard copy, I just brought it because it's easy to flip through during a meeting to find stuff, but I'm sure it can be emailed, and I can give you my email address and I can send you a copy of
Okay.
the document. But obviously that is critical to look at ahead of time so that you got the information
Yeah.
that's being evaluated on.
Sam, this is not shared with the applicant when it comes to.
No, we did not send it to that. No, we didn't.
So we did.
So-
Okay. Yeah, I think in some ways it would be nice, because then they can at least understand where some of the objections or whatever are going to come from, and then they can be more prepared to address things, if they know, because this is pretty much right on what we're going to be following. I mean, we may take a little bit of leeway here and there, but this is obviously based on the agreements that are in place.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it would be worth doing that just so that it helps the applicant to understand what the issues are going to be, and that way they can be more prepared.
Yeah, I agree. So,
Anybody up here have any further questions or comments? Open up to the audience if it's relative to this. Please come up, give us your name and address. Thank you.
Sorry, I also have allergies. Melanie Powers, 13 Pearson Street, although I'm speaking tonight as president of Friends of Tower Park. And we just want to reiterate our stance, firm stance, that Wes Cunningham's opinion and recommendations be followed as closely as possible. His expertise and professionalism are without question, and so I think it behooves the city to use that. I think it's very important. We are unanimous with, in our vote on that. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, if there's no further discussion, we can entertain a motion. There are 5 items on the application: the sliding door, the stairs to the lower yard, the railing material change, the flooring change, and the addition of a French drain.
So we can vote on them separately, independently.
You can do them independently. You can make one motion with an opinion on all 5 items, if you'd like to speak slowly. Or yes, we can do them individually. Anybody feeling bold?
Go through it ahead of time. All right, I would make a motion to vote on approval based on the recommendation, but I think also interpretation and discussion here on the regulations, that approval or voting on approval of adding the stairs down to the yard changing the materials of the flooring to a composite, installing the French drain, and removal of the flower boxes would be voted on for approval.
Okay. Do you want to round that out with, do you have an opinion on the sliding door and the railing material change?
Then I guess we're tabling the sliding glass door, the railing, until further meetings.
Yep. I'm good with that. Okay, so we have a motion with a recommendation to approve the stairs to the yard, the flooring change, the French drain, the removal of the planters boxes with an affirmative on those items, but a rejection or tabling of the proposed sliding door modification and the railing material change. Do we have a second?
Second?
Okay, is there any further discussion? Okay, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, thank you. So as soon as you can get material back in, you can be on the agenda the next go-around for those 2 items. Appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you guys for coming tonight. Thank you guys for pulling together the material for the meeting. We'll go ahead and take a motion to adjourn at 6:33.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
We have a motion. Is it seconded?
I'll second it.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Great. Thank you all. Have a good evening.